Welcome to the Westminster Effects Doxology podcast, where we exist for the glory of God and the tone of his people. I'm Cody Fields. Go buy stuff for your guitar at westminstereffects.com. Join the discussion in the Westminster Effects Green Room on Facebook. I'm joined in person by...
Hey everybody, Bradley Cox, pastor at Resurrection Church in Greer, South Carolina.
And the OG gang's all here. Via the interweb we have...
Hey everybody, John Ross here, the Admiral of Augsburg, Westminster Effects artist. And I still haven't come up with something since last
that's
week.
2 weeks in a row.
You know what? Give me just a minute.
You're a little rusty. It's okay.
Patina.
And also via the internet, sporting his Indiana Hoosiers hat after last night's victory, the Indiana native, Cory Wing. Cory, welcome back to the podcast.
I am not as festooned as I was last time. I was in full suit or what have you last time.
Word.
It is.
That's such a great word.
But I figured I have to represent, though I've been in North Carolina for a number of years, about half my life in North Carolina, about half my life in Indiana. But I was born and reared in North Carolina, or pardon me, born and reared in Indiana. Excuse me. And a lot of my family's still there.
Yeah.
All of my family that's in the dirt is definitely still there. Which the older I get, oddly, the more that means.
Yeah.
I actually like.
I
like your attire
thinking about
there, Cody, because Cory. The last time podcast we did with you, I felt like the beginning of the Garth Brooks song, right? Like I showed up in boots and ruined your black tie affair. I feel so much more comfortable today. And congrats,
Cory,
by the
I've
way.
been thinking about this sort of heritage thing a lot, because recently, and I forget the math, it doesn't matter, but I have now lived more in Nebraska than I have in Iowa, right? So that technically, just by the law of mathematics, makes me a Nebraskan. But there's something here that's, I'm from Iowa. Even though I'm not particularly proud of that fact, nonetheless, the reality of that doesn't escape me. Even though the food in Nebraska is better, the culture in Nebraska is mostly better, the politics in Nebraska better, but I'm still an Iowan. It's weird. So I resonate with that.
Oh.
Yeah. Whereas we're just two South Carolina boys over here.
That's right.
Born and raised and still here. I still live 200 feet from where I grew up. So, anyway.
What was the final score last night? I didn't see the end.
Was
27-21.
Yep, there we go.
I tell you what, man, Indiana looked impressive the whole season, man.
Yeah.
Great football team.
My favorite part.
To go from and my wife hates sports, so and after 15 years she's almost beat it out of me as well. But I had to explain to her that they were the losingest football team in American collegiate sports. I mean, no football program was crappier than Indiana. I mean, seriously, Indiana's won, I think, 5 NCAA titles in basketball, especially during like the Bobby Knight years and things. Sure. So we've always had a pretty impressive basketball program, but football, that was Purdue's game and Notre Dame's game. So if you were from Indiana, and you liked football, you were a Purdue fan or a Notre Dame fan. And then our new coach came, and we went from, the worst team in football to last year he took us to like 10-2, and then this year, to be the first team in the history of collegiate football to go 16-0, win the national championship. It really is historic what he's pulled off. It's incredible.
100%.
Well, as far as teams that wear red and white go, it certainly seems that the good at football thing has transferred from Nebraska a little bit further east. Nebraska's a volleyball and basketball school. I don't know if I brought that up last time. I think
that actually is. Didn't they play a volleyball game like in the football stadium relatively recently?
Yeah, darn near sellout as well.
That's
93,000
that is insane.
Seats. Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah,
and we have a professional volleyball team in Omaha now, which is a thing, and yeah, and everyone's still, yeah, go Cornhuskers. But
I tell you, my favorite part about Signetti in the post game was like, "Hey, what are you going to do now?" He's like, "I'm going to crack open a beer."
Yeah.
And by the way, it's from, what was it? Hoosier Brewery. Like, he shouts out this microbrewery.
Yeah.
They're probably bursting at the seams with orders right now.
Yeah.
And he's just one of us, is all.
Yeah.
But he's just a psychopath with football.
It's so impressive, though. So impressive.
Yeah. So
Well, and such a good leader.
No
I mean,
doubt.
and again,
Yeah.
as four Christian men who know how important leadership really is, such an impressive leader that when he left his former school that he'd coached at, I'm drawing a blank on.
James Madison.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Like 12 or 13 guys came to Indiana with him. Yeah. I mean, and I don't mean like coaches. Coaches, yes, did too. But players,
Right.
transferred schools to continue playing under Signetti. I mean, that speaks volumes to the type of leader and man that he must be. When young men would uproot their entire, collegiate career and say, "No, wherever you go, I'm with you." I mean,
Yeah.
that spoke volumes to me.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, and I'd say this too. Like, I mean, Nick Saban's got the title GOAT, and in many ways, rightfully so.
Right.
But he didn't take Indiana to the national championship. He took Alabama and LSU, and two schools with storied football programs. And
Yeah.
so, like, I just have a ton of respect for that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the actual reason we brought Cory on, not to talk about Indiana football, as much fun as that is some of your music that you've released recently. So I guess tee us up however you want to with this, and then we'll actually have a listen and then discuss more. So give us the superlatives of what's going on.
Sure. So I've been a musician for most of my life. Started playing music semi-professionally in high school. Started touring semi-professionally back in high school, actually, and then into college. I've been in the studio a number of times. If it can be tried musically, as far as from a technology standpoint, and what I mean by that is I've recorded in studio the old-fashioned way, back when it was all analog. I've done digital recording. I've done studio musicians where I've paid out the nose to hire studio musicians and do it that way, because I'm mostly a vocalist, though I do play some instruments. So I've had a long history with music and have enjoyed it. I was a music major in college until I decided that I didn't want to take Music Theory 3, and they couldn't force me. So I mean, I've been in and around music pretty much my entire life. And so in my break from seminary, we always take the month of December off for my seminary, because all of it is pastors and, guys wanting to be pastors. And Christmas season for churches, as you guys all know, is very, very busy. So we always take December off. And from about mid-November to the end of the year, I wrote and produced and arranged 15, 25, 20, 30, 36 or 7 songs. And I hadn't written a song in 20 years. So a lot of pent up songwriting in my soul had just kind of built up over 20 years. And then in about 45 days, I decided to write 37 or so songs.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So let's hear one of those. This may surprise both John and Bradley in terms of the style for this one, particularly with Cory's previous festoonment in the last podcast and his occupation as a PCA.
I'm going to use
pastor.
that word all day long.
Yeah,
I'm going to find ways
all
to use
week.
it.
Yeah, you got to put it in your sermon for Sunday. And
Done.
so this one, what is this? Kill All of Me? Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's correct.
The
Yep.
screen's farther away than I'm used to. So here we go.
Bury me deep so I don't rise again. Never rise again. 'Cause I am so sick of the man I have been. Who I have been. Crucify every last bit of my pride. Put it into all of my selfish desires. I'm begging you, Lord. Kill stands, for his justice is fair. Oh my God, please hear my prayer.
That's got
Bury me deep so I don't rise again.
a little bit of Memphis Mayfire vibe going on there.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah,
I have no idea who that is.
But
I was thinking Skillet. It sounds a little bit like Skillet. That's about as far as I go.
sorry,
I hope that's not offensive to you, Corey, but
I take both as high praise.
Yeah, exactly. We used to basically have a drinking game for for whenever I mentioned me being Post Mill or a John Piper reference, and now it's turned into Skillet references. So all of those of you playing at home, hopefully not while driving, take a shot. But Corey, tell us
Shot of turmeric or something.
Yeah.
That's all the rage these days.
tell us about this song and what's going on here.
Yeah, so that song is on what officially was the second album that I released, because out of those 37 songs, I released 3 albums.
Okay.
And the first album was very personal. It's basically my story, my testimony, how I came to Christ. I was married and divorced. My first wife left me and married another guy. And God, in his incredible kindness, used that dark time of my life to draw me unto himself and to save me. So I tell that story in the first album, and then I that sounds like it's going to end on a downer, but I pick up with how I met my second wife, and then us having kids, and kind of, the wonderful journey of redemption that God has had me on. The second album, which this song comes from, is called Return Flight, and it's called that because the aforementioned band that I toured with back in high school and college was a group called Flight 417. It was taken out of 1 Thessalonians 4:17, which is, and then we which are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds, and so shall we ever be with the Lord. So we would be in flight. And so Flight 417 was the band I toured with back in the 90s, in the early, even into very early 2000s. And so 8 or 9 of the songs on that album are songs that I wrote back then when I was touring. So one of the songs on that album is called Cloud 9. It's the first song I ever wrote when I was 16 years old. And it was neat to kind of rearrange some of those early songs and kind of give them a new shiny finish. And then there are 4 new songs that I wrote for this album that are brand new songs, and Kill All of Me is a brand new song that I wrote for this album. And then the third album is a bluegrass album, because I'm a big bluegrass nut. So yes, the third album is all bluegrass album. And so to say that I've got a kind of very country influence, but the first album kind of dips into a lot of different genres, but it's mostly country. And then kind of a screamo, emo, I don't want to say post-hardcore. It never gets really that hard.
It depends on what your
say,
definition of post-hardcore is, but
that's true. That's true. So I would say more screamo-y, emo-y. The second album's that, and then bluegrass for the third album, and all of them. And I think this is the big part that you're hoping I get to. All of them are assisted by AI. So they are all original lyrics by me. Again, all original kind of song arrangements and ideas by me, and then assisted with AI. So the vocals and the instrumentation is all AI. And yeah, well, I don't want to go further than that, though I'm sure we will in the episode. That's the whole point. But let me just leave it there.
Yeah, I think this is a really good discussion for Christians to have, because one, art is a gift from God in order for us to, reflect His glory back to Him, but also to help us explore emotions, things that we go through in a fallen world, all that kind of thing. And there's been a lot of hubbub in the online world about AI generated music. And I think there's obviously different gradients of how all that happens. Like, you can just say, give me a song, and it will spit out a song. I think that's one level, but what you're doing here is a different level, where you've actually written lyrics, you're giving proper direction, BPMs, and all that kind of thing. But we even see Facebook groups saying, no AI music allowed here, right? Like in particular Christian metal and music groups, and that's fine. House rules. I'm not going to complain about that. It's your group and your rules, and that's all fine. But then you have blanket universal statements effectively saying any amount of artificial intelligence involved in music is verboten. It's totally off limits. It's soulless and whatever. And my first question is, well, how much pitch correction have you ever used on any of your vocals? Because that is artificial intelligence, whether you like it or not. And praise God for Melodyne, because it has gotten me out of quite a few pinches before. So, fellers, what do we think here? There's a lot of angles that we could approach this from.
This is poignant for me. And it's interesting. So let's unpack it, and I'll try not to take up or keep us here till tomorrow. So my career, the actual way I support my family is I'm a senior leader in the technology space, and while the topic here is the use of AI in music production, what we see very commonly, especially in the last 2-3 years, is the advent of agentic, and I'll get to that meaning in a second, agentic AI coding assistance. So when we started down this AI train, kind of where we were was using ChatGPT, Claude from Anthropic, Grok, pick your poison, Copilot, and through prompting you would kind of craft a narrative of what you would want, and just in chat format you would say, hey, I need to build a script in Python that does X to Y, however you're constrained by A, B, and C, whatever. We don't need to get into the art of AI prompting, although it certainly is, and Cory, I think you're going to touch on that. But what we've moved to is, rather than using it as almost a script generator, any of you in the field think of it as an intelligent form of SourceForge, right, or a public GitLab repository. Where we've moved to is this agentic space where you can tell it the outcome rather than coaching it towards the means, and it will develop the end. So tools like Replit, Claude Code, Cursor, and GPT's Codex, I think, are some of the big players in that space. And what you will get there is ultimately an application that, with some minor tweaks and some minor coaching, will run, it will execute, and it will ultimately do the output largely untouched. And that's what we mean by agentic. Like the agent, right, the chat interface, the bot, can do what you're asking of itself. It's not dependent on you as the engineer taking the script output and then putting it into something. I think the analog that we can draw here is when we go into music production and we look at tools like pitch correction or software musicians in Logic Pro. That's been a feature in Logic Pro and GarageBand for years. Software drummer in Logic Pro 11, they dropped software bassist and software keys. I've used those personally because I can't play drums. I can't be bothered to play keys. I certainly can't be bothered to play bass. So except in that, it kind of you're limited by kind of styles, and you have some faders and dials and things that you can use to adjust or humanize or push or pull the tempo, etc. And I would kind of liken that to Gen 1 AI coding assistants, this sort of conversational, not quite right, give me this script again, and you take that chunk of code, that excerpt, and you insert it into your service or your runtime or whatever. Into now, where the tools that we have available to us, and certainly the ones that Cory, you used, through elaborate prompting, and I want you to get into that, you were able to have the agent orchestrate itself and come into an outcome that you can then iterate on and then re-coach on the outcome rather than coaching on the individual parts. Like in Logic, whether it be pitch correction, MIDI instruments, or otherwise, you need to coach the process. You know, it's like, I want to humanize this a bit more. I need less hi-hat. I want to move to a shaker here, right? You're talking about that rather than describing a vibe or a style or something that you ultimately want. And so there's the pragmatic sort of technical breakdown from my perspective. We'll get into the internal struggle after a bit. But before I turn it back over to you, Cory, Cody, anything to add in that space before we talk about how, Cory, you used these tools to come up with what really is a great tune? Of course, just the one we listened to, but I'm sure all three albums have
they're all
similar
fantastic.
quality. Yeah.
If you do say so yourself.
They're all great. Everyone, some people say they're the absolute best albums that have ever been released.
Got the hand motions and
That was
everything.
pretty
That was
good.
good. I'll have things to respond to with Cory because I think I know where he's going to go with some of this. But Bradley, go ahead. Your thoughts.
I feel like inclined to reserve comment at this point a whole lot because honestly, I feel like I'm getting educated.
Sure.
It was actually a year ago today that I had my first experience with ChatGPT. And I am just not techie.
At all.
I know how to turn my laptop on. And if it gets much beyond that, I've got to grab one of my children. So I just...
Bradley still has Clippy installed.
Yeah, exactly.
That's how much of a non-tech guy he is.
I'm not
You're
trying
to write a sermon. Would you like help with that?
I'm not trying to just be like, whatever, like self-deprecating here for the sake of humor. I just literally we had a staff and elders retreat last year, and prior to the retreat, we did a a survey with our staff and elders where we're just asking, evaluative questions about how we're doing in certain areas and where we can improve and giftedness that we're recognizing in each other, all that kind of stuff. And we got all the responses back from each individual. And your father, who's Stan, who is a pastor here, used ChatGPT to summarize the information. And I was literally blown away.
Yeah.
I had never seen anything like that. And, not having to comb through the details, and this is so simple compared to this, what John just described. I mean, I'm struggling to stay with him.
Yeah.
What John is describing and how this stuff works and what he's doing with the company that he works for. And I'm literally, we just took survey responses, put them in ChatGPT, said, synthesize this information for us so that we can utilize it at the retreat and have some fruitful discussion. And I was like, this is the most incredible thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And since then I've used it to here's an example. I needed to send a very important email after a long, long, long day. In my brain, this email was going to some leaders in the church. It was very, very important. It was time sensitive. I needed to get it out, but my brain was done. And so I went into ChatGPT and I said, I need an email about this. And here I bulleted, here's the information I need to give my leaders. Bam, 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 bam. I didn't have to think through grammar, syntax. I didn't have to think through any of that. It spit it out. I tweaked it a bit, and I was so thankful. So all that to say, I'm really new to this. I'm really just now becoming aware of how AI is impacting the music industry and art. I'm also becoming increasingly aware of how it's also affecting the ministry of the word and the pulpit, and how pastors are using it to write sermons, like start to finish, or like that. This is uncharted, a bit scary. I'm not sure of all the moral implications. So Cory, I'd love for you to educate me, because I trust your judgment. And I like what I'm hearing so far. What you were even saying before we hit record. So I guess that was a long time of me saying I'm not going to comment and me commenting. So sorry.
Spoken like a pastor.
It's like a true pastor, man.
Yeah, my final point, and then you go 20 more minutes. Yeah,
I'm getting ready to close, Cory. I'm getting ready to close.
yeah. I say that as a guy who is known at his church for doing that.
Yeah,
so, no, let me address the ministerial implications, because as a pastor, that is also very prescient for me. I would view a guy using, ChatGPT, Grok, whatever, it doesn't matter which one you're using, but using AI to completely produce a sermon kind of ex nihilo, that you haven't touched, right? You just say, I think I'm going to preach out of John chapter 3 this week, verses 1 to 8. So write me a sermon out of John 3 1 to 8. I have major problems with that. To me, that is akin to plagiarizing,
Exactly.
another guy's sermons, or that's you've done no work.
Exactly.
There's no fingerprint. Not only of the Almighty, because His word doesn't return void. Honestly, I think the only person in that will be potentially seen is God, because His words are His words, and even AI, as powerful as it is, cannot usurp God. Which I will get back to that. But you have misrepresented that work. So now, if you say I'm preaching John 3 1 to 8. I've done all of my own study. Here's my illustrations. Here's my 4 points. Here's an outline. Here's all the work that I've done to create this sermon. Now, could you help me draw up a manuscript based on my work?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I personally, now again, I've got friends who would say I'm not okay with that either. Mm-hmm. And I respect that. That's fine. Personally, I don't see a problem with that. Because quite honestly, I know pastors at mega churches whose secretaries have been doing that for years.
Yeah. You're just cutting out the middleman at this point. Yeah.
That's right. I'm being candid. The pastor does all the heavy lifting on the front end, and then they hand a outline and their illustrations and all the same stuff I just said to their secretary, and they say, hey, could you collate this information and kind of make it into something that's more resemblance of a manuscript? So it's. I think we need to be very, very careful. And I have friends, very dear friends, who are afraid of kind of the ghost in the machine, that they would say AI is maybe even demonic or somehow influenced by demonic forces. And again, that goes so far above my pay grade and my spiritual acumen. And I just want to be transparent. I am not Michael Heiser. So, I'm not going to pretend to understand that world.
The Nephilim are not in the silicon chips.
Yeah.
But there are people that believe that,
right? Absolutely.
So the ghost in the machine is a big fear for a lot of people. I just recently had to talk to one of our deacons who was, who brought this up to me, and I said to him, my friend, God has proven in human history, and we have it recorded in Scripture, that if we, dirt monkeys, eventually get to a place where He's uncomfortable, He'll intervene. The Tower of Babel is example A. When we do something that He says, nope, no, that's far enough. He's proven that He's willing to step into human history on more than one occasion and say, Sodom and Gomorrah are going to end, the Tower of Babel is going to stop. There are times, and God doesn't change. We know that from Scripture. So if this gets out of control, He's more than capable of saying that's enough.
That's a good point.
Now, I want to make myself very clear on how powerful I think AI is. And John, I'm really curious, given especially your professional acumen. I think AI is the car and the internet is the wheel. Now, is the wheel one of the greatest inventions ever? Of course. But I think all of us would say that the even better invention is the car. I didn't take my kids to school this morning on a wheel. I took them in a car.
You'd be really dizzy.
Well, yeah. And yeah, so we have a secondary technology that I would argue is a superior technology utilizing a primary technology that was in and of itself incredible. I think AI is that. I think AI is the car. I think it is 10 times more powerful than the internet. Now, it wouldn't exist without the internet, much like the car wouldn't exist without the wheel. But I think AI, we are scratching the surface. I think we're still barely learning the potency and the power of this tool. I think it will go down, and already it will. If it didn't progress a day past where it is, and of course it will go down as one of the most significant tools that humans ever produced. I had lunch just yesterday with a friend of mine who's in law enforcement. The things that he shared with me that they're doing with it, like if I had hair, would have curled it. It was mind-numbing how much information they're able to collate with AI in nanoseconds.
Yeah.
That Google, as powerful as Google is, was not able to do at all.
Right.
They couldn't get all of the information on any of the four of us with resources like Google and GIS to, what properties does this person own, or, where have they lived in the past, or, man, AI is allowing them to do this stuff in nanoseconds. So AI is so incredibly powerful that to not be afraid of it would be silly.
Right.
I'm afraid of electricity because electricity, though powerful, can kill me. So it's AI is very, very serious. It could be used in horrific and dangerous ways, but it's powerful. So now let me shift to music. Musically, and some of you may know who Tim Bushong is. He's a fellow Indiana guy.
He owns one of my buffers.
Tim's a great guy. Tim's a brilliant musician and producer, music producer.
Yeah, real quick, John and Bradley, if you've heard the Radio Free Geneva theme for James White's Dividing Line, where it's A Mighty Fortress Is Our God, the hard rock version, interspersed with Steven Anderson and those guys, that's Tim's doing.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, Tim's a genius, and Tim has produced albums for people you've heard of. Both in secular and Christian world. Yep. Tim's a really, really talented musician, and Tim has a very different opinion on this than I do. We've talked about it, and my goal, even for these three albums, would be one day to maybe go back in an actual studio and at least do the vocal work, because I'm a vocalist primarily. And then either, do what instrumentation or get friends of mine to help me with the instrumentation. I'd love to do that. But that takes a ton of time and money and either a home studio or going to a studio. Yep. And I just didn't have all of that, So this was a wonderful resource to get a lot of stuff I needed to therapeutically almost get out of myself done in a hurry, and to make it something that still was recognizable to me as my product, right? But so musically, when I think about AI and when I think about the music industry and AI, I think the music industry making this a hill they're going to die on, and there are people in the music industry that are treating it that way, I find that so comically laughable that I almost don't have words for it. And I say that because for most people that just have a very basic relationship with music, meaning you turn on the radio and you listen to music, you've never played music, you've never been on the inside, even in a tertiary way of the industry. You don't have any friends that are industry insiders. You just know that when you turn on the radio, there's music, and you like this style, or what have you. Then you don't know all of the stuff that the music industry. You mentioned auto-tune earlier. Auto-tune's one example.
Yeah.
And auto-tune has been used now for probably 30 years, give or take.
Yeah.
And it's such an industry mainstay at this point that when you went to see X, whoever X was in concert, and you walked away from that concert going, they didn't sound as good in concert as they did on the album.
Yeah.
Duh. You know, that's because in the studio they had all of these resources at their disposal that they don't have live.
Right.
I'm old enough to remember Milli Vanilli and Ashley Simpson, who totally jettisoned her career from lip syncing. So the fact that the music industry has been doing stuff with technology, that is such. I mean, again, my goodness, we're on. Cody, this is the Westminster Effects Doxology podcast. You sell guitar pedals. Mm-hmm. That's technology.
Yep.
At one point in time, that was brand new technology.
And for that matter, at one point, people had cranked up amps and blown out speakers, and that was the origination of distortion in guitar sounds. And
that's right.
And a lot of people are like, that doesn't sound like a guitar, therefore you shouldn't do it ever. And some people are like, no, that sounds awesome. I'm going to do that on purpose. Right. And now we have an entire industry around that. Yeah. So this does prompt a question, and all three of you chime in on this one, and because I have my own opinion, is some of the concern from some people around AI music, particularly generative AI is the term, is that it is utilizing what is out there currently, learning from that and saying, hey, if it's this hard rock style, I'm going to look at these particular popular hard rock bands or these particular popular hip hop artists or whatever, and then create something based on what I've heard from them. And then the conclusion is with many is, well, that's stealing. That's basically stealing their intellectual property. So, and I think you could probably apply this across a wide variety of different things with AI. So, thoughts on that?
What would Ed Sheeran say in a courtroom? And again, some of you won't know what I'm referencing. Ed Sheeran was sued over copyright and over plagiarism, and he took his guitar into the courtroom and he played 4 chords for the judge and for the jury and said, "What song is that?" And then he basically said, "It's all of these songs." And then he played through like 30 songs that use those same 4 chords.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's funny to me that the music industry, and I say this as a guy that was inside it, the music industry is filled with gatekeepers. Mm-hmm. And so where they're irritated, where they're mad, is that they are losing the ability to gatekeep. Mm. And again, I'm old enough, I remember when Radiohead did the first self-released album in the late 90s. And they released it on their website, free of charge. You could pay them if you wished to, but if you didn't want to pay them, you could literally download it from their website for free. And everyone laughed at them and said, "Oh, they'll go under without the industry's backing. Radiohead's done for." They sold more copies of that album than any album to that date that they had ever had. Now they've surpassed it since then, of course, but they proved, no, the public wants what the public wants, and they will get it from us just as soon as they'll get it from, whether it's, Sony or Epic or whatever record, company that big record producer and record company. So it's again, I laugh because I think this is what the music industry has done every time there's been a big emerging technology that shifts the industry in ways they didn't anticipate. They wanted to control the shifts. Again, all of us know who Luke Combs is because of YouTube. Right. YouTube created Luke Combs. Yep. And now he's a staple. I mean, my 10-year-old sings Luke Combs songs, but she does that because YouTube exists. So I mean, it's an incredible thing when the public starts to have resources to sidestep industry gatekeepers, and I think it comes down to money. Let's not mistake this. It's all about money. Can they commoditize and monetize the songs that people like myself are putting out with these tools? And if they can, then they'll go, "Hey, welcome to the party." But if they can't, then it's, "How dare you? This is this is a sacred space." And, you are, my goodness, don't you have any respect for the hard work that people have put in to learning to play guitar over 100 hours of practice. Or of course I do. But I mean, Cody and I, and Cody, I don't think I'm stepping on your toes, and I certainly don't mean to. Cody and I have talked about this offline so much. Mm-hmm. He's a better musician than me, and I'm a better lyricist than him.
Yes.
I mean, so I'm great at writing lyrics. It's what I've always been best at. And he's great at writing music. So historically, guys like me had to partner with guys like him, and guys like him had to partner with guys like me. And when I say historically, one of my favorite artists of all time is Elton John. Elton John is one of the most brilliant musicians of the modern era. I don't care if you like his music or not. The fact is, the man is brilliant. You don't have to even like his lifestyle. He's a brilliant musician. But Bernie Taupin, whose name you probably don't know, wrote all of his lyrics. So there'd be no Rocket Man, yes, without Elton John. That's true. Rocket Man wouldn't be Rocket Man without Elton John. But Rocket Man wouldn't be Rocket Man without Bernie Taupin. Mm-hmm. And so it's that is a marriage that has always existed in the music industry. And so for guys like me, AI has been, it's been incredible. A guy like me who's a poet at heart, who's a lyricist at heart, mm-hmm. And who can plunk out a few chords on a guitar and sure, I mean, I can do that. But I couldn't do what you heard at the opening of this episode. There's no way, and so it's such a resource and been a game changer for a guy like me.
One thing I would also say as well to the question I posed about generative AI and it's just copying or learning from these other musicians. That's literally what every other musician does. I can't tell you how many times I've sat down and, man, I got this riff in my head, and then I finally get it out. It's like, dang it. I had that, I listened to that song 3 days ago, and that's why it was stuck in my head. This wasn't actually me. Or my former bassist had a habit of, and he did this on purpose, of course, is he would take something like a Coheed and Cambria riff and play it backwards. It's yours at that point, right? It's not their riff. It's then become your riff, and you've played off of it. That's literally how music, how teaching a sermon works, because you're reading commentaries, right? Not cover to cover, all of course, but you've been influenced by what you've read and by our other elders. That doesn't mean that you've plagiarized them and stolen from them, stolen their thunder. Same thing with John with coding. There's all manner of copying or emulating different ways to code. That doesn't mean that you stole someone's property, right? Am I right? Am I tracking somewhere? Well, I mean, maybe it's different in the coding world.
Depends on the code. So coding gets weird because when those languages are written, the syntax is documented, right? The rules are pre-defined, right? Regardless of what your language is, Python, Node.js, Ruby, if anybody out there understands those things. And I don't really, that's why I'm a technology leader rather than any sort of software developer. But the rules that surround those things already exist. And it could be argued that those rules within, especially Western music certainly exist. We like things in 3, 4, 6, or maybe 7 if you really want to get spicy. We clap on the 2 and the 4. We put our kick on the 2 and the 4. We put our snare on the 1 and the 3. Unless we're a little far south, maybe have a banjo, then we can switch it up a little bit. Those rules exist.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And when it comes to generative AI, right, which can be viewed as AI creating something ex nihilo, almost. It is taking input, whether it be musically, programmatically, or even kind of linguistically. It's taking input from all of the material on which it has been trained, right? And usually not in a way that says the actual words together. Let's just break it down to simple language. It's very rarely that AI on the back end is using the words. It's breaking down these things into tokens, smaller chunks. And we don't need to dive deep into that. But even AI doesn't know, doesn't understand the language like we do. It understands the relationship between different components of things, which is why prompting and contextualizing and constraining it is really where the power is to any AI tool, whether it be musically, programmatically, or otherwise. If you give it a simple prompt, it will come out with a simple answer. Anybody who's tried to do an image can attest to this. The more detail you provide, the more limits you put on its quote unquote creativity, the more accurate it will be to the outcome that you desire. So, Cory, you said something at the beginning of the episode that is implicitly true, is that these tools, or the output or the outcome of these tools, is much higher quality when the person working with the AI tool is capable in that space, right? Vibe coding is certainly a thing in the technology space. People who have never done it before can go to tools like Replit. They can build something just from an idea and just like, it doesn't work. I don't know what to do. It's like, yeah, you're right, it doesn't work. I'm going to debug this, and I'm going to re-index the database tables, and it's going to do all that stuff on the back end from what you said. It doesn't work. Right. But if you are really a technologist, really understand these things, you can be very prescriptive of maybe the type of database technology it's using, the type of language it's using, because you know the differences there. Just like you, Cory, when you're working with, I think you said Sora to produce these tracks, you know what the guitar sounds like. You know what a syncopated breakdown sounds like. Mm-hmm. You know that when you want a bass with a bit of overdrive on it, you don't just like, I need it to sound more like a used Scrub Daddy. That's what I need it to sound like. You can actually tell it, I need the bass signal chain to be something akin to a compressor, a Tube Screamer flavored overdrive pedal into a Ampeg SVT stack. I don't know if you went that deep, but you could, right? And the output would be much more what you expect and desire based upon your individual expertise there. And I think that can be said for any AI tool, agentic or otherwise.
Yeah.
Where I sit weird in this is I feel slightly better about it in the coding space, but AI in music as a generative construct rather than a tool, right? So when we think of internet versus AI, Cory, you brought that up. I mean, the internet itself is a network driven towards, and a set of standards driven towards consumption, right? And interconnection, but not really something that creates anything new of itself. I almost tie an analog in my head. You talk to a car guy, you'll see bumper stickers if you go to a car show that says "built, not bought," in which that simple statement is a testament to the work that they invested, the blood, sweat, and tears, literally with auto mechanics, I think, that have been poured into this vehicle that they restored frame off the ground up. And there's pride in that. And this pride piece is kind of where I want to go, although very briefly, is when it comes to music, I'm not so turned off by AI created, and that's not to say that it just did it itself. It can be coached, constrained, contextualized, etc., and it can be the expression of the creator. But when it comes to AI in general, I'm not against it. Certainly not against the tools. But when I think about it in relation to myself, I have a really hard time not being overcome with just an immense amount of sorrow. Not for the music industry, not for music as a construct or an art form, not for the artists themselves, but simply for me. And it's the same feeling I get, going back in time to a way earlier episode, it's the same feeling I get when, if we're using tracks, right, supplemental tracks on for the worship band, because maybe we really want that synth part, or we really want that percussion loop, and we're not going to do it live. Heck, Phil Wickham didn't even do it live, so why do we have to do it? So we use that, but maybe the worship leader didn't adjust it properly, and I hear in my ear the guitar part that I was just about to play.
Yeah.
Right? It's that same feeling of, if it can do it, why am I even here?
Sure.
And I've struggled for a long time with music production because I've got the equipment, no soundproofing or acoustic treatments in my office, but I've got the stuff, right? I've got more stuff than other people who have had better outcomes have, right? And I can't get something that I'm happy with regardless. AI mastering assistant in Logic Pro, shoot, even sending it off to Fiverr is
To get a Pakistani guy to do it?
I'm told all the time, like, wow, that song is great. You did such a good job. And I really want to believe that. But when it comes time to cut tape, I just can't get over how garbage it is. And then I would love to have a more metal flavored track. I've certainly arranged things and executed with the band at church on some things, and that have been very well received. I've been very pleased with. But when I hear that track, I am simultaneously jealous and almost hopeless. Because what's the point that I'm trying to do? For you, it was this therapeutic, I have these words, I need to get them out. I need to be able to share them with people. I don't have the time, the equipment, the prowess, whatever it may be to do that. I'd like to think that I have a little bit of each of those, but the time that I've invested for a product that is just garbage, in my, like, to myself. No one likes listening to themselves. I get that. But if I could just boil the ocean for a couple seconds and generate a track that is what I want, then, pardon the vulgarity, why the hell do I have a bunch of guitars on my wall? That's that sort of mental and a very much emotional cycle that I drive into. And I think it comes back to this pride, and that the creation of music is extensions of one's self.
Right. Yeah.
Now, if you take a step back, knowing the music industry, you realize it ain't quite that.
Yeah. No.
Well, let me. Can I address that just quickly?
100%.
So let me use 3 real world musical examples from kind of different points in musical history and a little bit different ways of doing it. I'll go oldest to newest. So all of you know who the Monkees are. You know, I mean, Monkees are arguably at this stage. Now, obviously, if you've got, you know, Gen Zers or Gen Alphas or maybe even millennials that watch this program, they're going to go, who? But for all of us, and Brad and I most especially, because I think we're probably the 2 oldest on camera, the Monkees are pivotal for American music. The Monkees were created when the Beatles were at their zenith. A guy looked at the money that the Beatles were making and said, how do I do that? How do I capitalize on that? And he went and found 4 good-looking kids who, honestly, I think one of them at the time knew how to play any music at all. Mickey Dolenz had a great voice and he could sing, and who was the drummer, by the way. Most people look at the little, you know, British, what was his name? The lead singer, or again, who was billed as the lead singer. I can't remember his name all of a sudden, and shame on me. But most people, you know, look at him and go, oh, Mickey Dolenz, who played drums, was doing most of the vocal work. And over time, they learned how to be a real band. So if you saw the Monkees, 20 years after their inception, you were really seeing the Monkees. But when they were first invented, I mean, again, NSYNC, Backstreet Boys, a guy invented those groups.
Yeah.
But my second option would be, we all know Michael Jackson, the king of pop. Michael Jackson didn't play one instrument except this beautiful instrument right here.
Yep.
And he played that maybe better than almost anyone that's ever lived. I mean, his vocal quality, his tone, his ability with his voice to do some of the things he did are almost second to none. But Michael Jackson would go into a studio, because he had the money to do so, hire studio musicians and painstakingly do what I've done, but with just people.
Right.
And go, no, that doesn't sound right. And we will sit here until I get in my ear what's in my head. And so he would work with studio musicians for days, weeks at times, to get them to make exactly the right sounds that he was hearing in his head to come out on tape. And none of us cared. We all went, man, Beat It is amazing, and Billie Jean is incredible. I agree. They are incredible. And then third, and this would be from a visual medium more even than musically, you've got the Gorillaz.
Yeah.
If any of you know who the Gorillaz are, it's a cartoon band.
Yeah.
Now there are real musicians and vocalists singing and playing the music, but if you go see them in concert, it's a screen and you see cartoons doing the music. I mean, the Gorillaz is a animated band. The Archies, you could say, if you want to go way back. Again, same kind of idea. So again, we've been doing this forever. It's just computers are now doing some of the lifting, and it is uncomfortable. I will be the first to admit it's uncomfortable. But again, I'm staring, what you can't see off camera, at 1, 2, 3 guitars, a banjo. Behind me, there's a bass and another, and my Telecaster, and a mandolin, and another folk instrument that is escaping me at the moment. So, I mean, I've got instruments all around me. I know how to play pretty much most of them. The banjo, I would not want to have anyone hear me play banjo. It's horrible. But the rest of them, I know how to play. So again, I agree with you, John, that could I have went in and taken the time and produced something? Sure. And like I said, the second album is 8 or 9 songs that I had recorded with my previous band. And to your level of disgust, this is better. So the versions on Return Flight, the versions of the 9 songs that I wrote when I was much younger man, are so much better than what we recorded back in the late 90s and early 2000s. Not just from the recording sounds better because that was on analog DAT tapes and stuff, which again, you have to be into the industry to even know what that is. So yes, that's true. These are all digital and clean and not got the pops and the cracks, but it's just better. Total. It's better.
Right.
And does that irritate me and piss me off? Yeah, a little bit. But let me give one example from the first album, which again, like I said, is the most personal album to me, just lyrically, and it tells my life story. The first song on the first album, which arguably has been the most successful song that I've released out of these 3 projects, is called I Bought the Ticket. And it literally chronicles how I bought the ticket that my ex-wife ended up leaving me on. And I won't go into the whole story, but a person I know called me after they heard the song and said, how much of that is true? And I went, every word. Some of the other songs on that album, I did use a little creative license to fluff up the story. Like I say, that I had 4 wives in one of the songs. I haven't had 4 wives. But again, to make a hyperbolic point of how messed up I was back in those days before Christ, I said, that my 4th wife had left me and all. That, of course, that was hyperbole. But that song, I Bought the Ticket, is the story of what happened. It is exactly what happened. It took 20 years for me to get that out because of the pain associated with it, because of everything that happened in my life. And so while musically, yes, I put prompts in and things to make that happen, nobody else could write that song.
Yep.
No one on earth could write that song but me. It's my story. So I mean, to say that, is there a soulless element to it? Potentially. And I hear you and I agree even.
Yeah.
However, that as an example of, but that song wouldn't exist without my life. That's
Right.
my story.
Sure.
So there is real feeling and real emotion and real soul that goes into some of that. And yes, you are marrying two things that almost seem diametrically opposed at that point. Secondarily, and this is a completely different point, I feel, and Brad, I would be curious what you would say on this. John, I feel exactly what you just said. As a pastor, spiritually, every time I get up and preach, why the hell do I even do this sometimes? God doesn't need me. He does not need anything that Cory Wing has ever said other than he chooses to use ordinary means to accomplish his extraordinary ends. Could he save every human being that will ever be saved the way he saved Paul on the road to Damascus supernaturally? Of course he could. And arguably, it might be cleaner and better because then he's not cooperating with us sinners. But for whatever his amazing reasons are, he has chosen to use us to be part of that process. And so when I get up to preach the word, or Brad gets up to preach the word, or you guys share your testimonies, or give a Bible study, or in your lives, or you do a Sunday school class, or God uses all of that mess to then make something incredible. And I don't get it. I don't understand why he does it. I'm grateful. But I mean, I think we've categorized this in its own little nuanced category because AI is so new and it's so still uncomfortable for us. But again, this is not as weird as on the surface it may seem. We cooperate with powers we don't understand all the time.
Yeah. Go ahead. I know, Bradley, you got to bounce, but
Yeah.
Go ahead. Last word, and then we'll get where we can find you, and then I'll give a very quick clip of another good use of AI, and we'll leave it there. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just listening to you guys, and again, I have such little experience with this, but I find myself thinking more and more about in the last, I don't know, 100 years plus, how much we've had to learn how to steward. Like part of the essence of our being as humans is image bearing. We're in part, a big part of image bearing, I believe, is creating. We participate with the living God in creating other human beings through procreation. And we also create art, and we build buildings, and we so on and so forth. And I think part of our human story is that in that part of image bearing, creating, we've also developed tools along the way.
Yep.
I mean, at some point, sculptors went from just using their hands to using carving tools, right? Like that.
Yeah.
We make tools. That's part of who we are, and I think that's part of our human. It's part of our creativity to, as we create, make tools to help us create, and in so doing, at least for believers, glorify God and so on. So I'm all good with that. I'm good with tools, and I think we agree on this platform here today that there is a point at which tools become something more than that. Technology has reached the point where, it goes from a tool that helps me to create to it's actually doing the creating. And at that point, something feels wrong inside of us. And so I think it's come so far so fast. I think we're struggling to define where those lines are.
Yeah.
Because we can sit here, and depending on what side of the argument we fall on emotionally, we then intellectually justify our position,
Right.
in a variety of ways. And I think that's also part of the human the human experience, is that we do that, and those debates can be very helpful and so on.
Yep.
They can also be very destructive. But I think we've got we've got to give ourselves space, and we got to give ourselves grace to figure out where those lines are.
Yeah.
Because when we're still, you tech guys, would you agree? We're still discovering what AI is capable of.
Oh, yeah.
So, like, how do we even know where the line is? I think that's a difficult thing for musicians as well as pastors. You know, I got a great compliment from our worship minister in staff meeting on Monday. He's like, we were just kind of debriefing Sunday, and he was like, your sermon was so musical. It's like the way you were talking and the way that you were describing. We're in John, and we're at, you know, Peter's denial, and he's in the courtyard. He's warming himself by the fire, and you know, I was trying to describe that scene, and he's like, the way you described it was just me. I was like, that's a great compliment, because I want a sermon is a creative thing. Not that I'm, you know, I'm putting something on top of the Word of God,
right.
But there is creativity in it.
Yep.
And that creativity is used by God to the degree that I speak well about His Word. Last thing I'll say, I think there's also another consideration here, and that is how as technology develops, as our tools advance technologically, we would all agree that the human element is very, very important. And I wonder about the impact of the tools themselves on us. Mm-hmm. You know, like my wife was talking to me yesterday about a study that she had read, and I can't vouch for this particular study, but I've heard enough of this that I think this is legitimate, is that for the first time in recorded history since 2010, human cognitive development has declined. And a lot of that's being traced back to some of the tools that are now employed in our education system. You know, kids are on laptops; they're not opening books, and lots being written about a book as a tool,
Right. Yep.
just like a laptop is. But a lot is being written about how the different impact that holding a book makes on us versus looking at a screen with pixels.
Yep.
I remember years and years and years ago, some friends of mine got together, some songs were being written, and one of those friends had enough means to actually hire a studio, and an album was put together. It's the one and only album that I ever played on. They asked me to come in on one song and play keys for this one song. And it's like my one claim to fame. It's on Spotify. I'm not going to mention it because it's not that good. But anyway, I'm on Spotify. I've got a piano track on one song with this no-name band that nobody knows about. But I remember in the studio, one of my friends who's a very accomplished guitar player, they were working on this one song. It's not the song that I played on, but they were working on this one song, and they wanted the guitar to have this certain sound. Like kind of like Michael Jackson. I'm not comparing the two, but he had something in his head that he wanted, and he couldn't quite get it. You know, and this was back in the mid to late 90s. So, you know, there was nothing like Westminster Effects around at that time, all that kind of stuff. So here's what he did. He took his guitar. There was a Leslie speaker over in the corner
Yep.
for an organ. He took his guitar and he plugged it into that speaker.
Yep.
And started playing the riff for this song. And he was like, that's it. That's what I wanted. And now you could go on AI and you could say, I want this guitar riff to sound like the guitar is plugged into a Leslie speaker, you know, or something like that. Or I want it to sound kind of, you know, a little bit crunchy, but with some vibrato and almost like an organ. Maybe you could say it like that, and it could produce that. And that's fine. You still had some creative input into that thing, but like, what about the process of going through all of that? These are questions that I have.
Yeah.
The process of actually going, hey, there's a Leslie speaker over there. What if I plugged my guitar in there and see what it sounds like? What does that do to our development, you know, as creators? How does that impact us cognitively and creatively? I think these are questions that I have because we're literally sitting at the dinner table with my daughter last night, and we were. It's so funny. We were having this conversation about the different ways that we've grown up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I had just, a friend of mine had cut a bunch of wood at a piece of property that he owns. And on Sunday, he brought it in the back of his truck, and he's like, "Hey, I brought you a bunch of wood. I cut it up." And so we switched it to my SUV, and I brought it home and stacked it. And we were talking about that. And I started saying, when I was growing up, that me and the neighborhood kids, we used to build things out of my dad's wood pile, and we'd get in all kinds of trouble for it. But that creative, expression and stuff, it had an impact on us that a lot's being written now about what's the impact of kids staring at screens and watching YouTube and watching others who are creating post their creativity on YouTube and maybe losing a sense of that. And so I just want to say this, Cory, because I do have to go to a meeting, but I have a lot of respect for what you've done. As a very amateur musician myself, I'm intrigued by the possibility of, because I always struggled to write lyrics. I tried, but you don't struggle to write lyrics. You may feel like your weakness is more on the music side, but I have a lot of respect for you using AI in this way, because I do think that it's an incredibly compelling tool that undoubtedly has some good uses, and I have a lot of respect for that. I just have questions in general that don't necessarily apply to Cory's situation, but maybe to others. And so I think this is a great conversation to have, and I think it needs to be had on multiple levels.
Yeah. Cory, thanks for coming on. Where can people find you?
Well, my podcast and everything, of course, is called Civically Minded, but we didn't. I mean, and I love that we didn't talk about that today, because I get to talk about that on. I've talked about that on here before, and I've talked about it on another podcast ad nauseum. This is all under my name. This is Cory, Cory Wing, Wing, like a bird wing. Cory Wing. It's on Spotify, Apple Music. It's on Pandora. It's on YouTube. It's pretty much everywhere. You are probably going to find Cory Wong first. He is a national recording artist, much more talented than me.
And me.
And actually, I've now listened to some of his music, and it's pretty good.
It's very good guitar.
So you'll probably come across Cory Wong before you come across me. But the albums are called Sinner to Saint. That's the first album, which again is mostly country. But there's some other, because that album is so personal to me, I explored a bunch of musical genres that are also very personal to me. The second album is called Return Flight, and the third album is called On the Backside of the Mountain. So you can find all three of them on music purveyors.
Yes, sir. So this is a pretty funny parallel, honestly. I was in a conversation with a friend years ago on the Second Amendment, and he said, we just need to be honest with one argument about the Second Amendment, and that it's fun. Guns are fun. And in that same vein, generating AI music is fun sometimes. And I apologize to all the people in my church who have gotten birthday songs from my dad. I'm not talking about that kind of fun, but this is what we'll leave you with. Go love God, love your neighbor, make some music. Here is my AI prompt featuring the cheesiest, typical contemporary Christian music rendition of Psalm 137 verbatim. And the clip here will start at verse 7 of, "Remember, O Lord, against the sons of Edom, the people of God yearn for the imprecations of God," including Psalm 137. So here we go. And my mouse just died, so I'm just going to have to lean over and click it.
Remember, against the sons of Edom, the day of Jerusalem, who said, raise it, raise it to